Every year, before the flowers fully open, I harvest stems of Helichrysum italicum to make braided flower crowns by hand. This Mediterranean plant thrives in dry, chalky soils where many other flowers struggle. They form low silver mounds topped with clusters of golden buds as summer approaches. In ancient Mediterranean cultures, Helichrysum was often associated with endurance, sunlight, and immortality. To make a flower crown, you'll need a handful, no more, this is all you'll need, of flowers, preferably in this bud phase, where the stems are still flexible. Otherwise, if they're too far along, like this one, it tends to be a bit rigid. And if it's rigid, it could snap. But this flower is very forgiving. That's why it's perfect to work with. When I'm working, I like to lay them in this direction because it's easier to grab when I need to do it. I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. One where we braid on the table, and the other where you pick it up and braid it in your hand. I recommend braiding on the table if it's your first time, so you can get a feel for it. And then later, if you have crafty hands, you'll definitely be able to hold the braid in your hand. You're going to start with 3. Other materials you'll need are twine or floral wire. Have 2 small pieces prepared. It makes it easier. If you're going to use floral wire, have 2 small pieces prepared. I'll show you at the end. You'll need scissors to cut off stems that pop out and also at the end. Some natural fabric to make a ribbon. You get your 3 and you start a braid. The left over the right, and then the right over the nearest left. The left over the nearest right, the right over the nearest left. So now we're going to start adding like a French braid. I'm going to add one on top, and now they go together. I'm going to take the next one, cross it over, add one on top. Now they go together. Cross right over the nearest left, add one on top. They are together. Now the 2 together get crossed over because they stay together. And add. Cross over. And then add. Be sure they stay together. That's why it's a good exercise to practice on the table first. Cross over. Add. Cross over. Add. Now there are some things to keep in mind if you don't want the flowers to be really loose in the crown. When you cross over, try to keep the flower closest to the braid. Not too tight because you don't want to break the stem, but just hold it close. So when I cross over, I'm going to cross really close to the neck of that flower. And I'm going to add, keeping it close. Cross over. And add. Cross. Add. Cross. Add. Pick them all up. Cross. Add. At a certain point, you'll notice that some of the stems that we first started with are going to start to feel a little bit too rigid, and you don't want to force it to go in. Just let them stick out and leave them. So I'm going to take the long ones, cross them over, and leave some of those previous ones to go ahead and stick out, because we'll snip them off when we finish. When you're crossing them over, instead of crossing them in a rounded bunch, try your best to flatten them out. You see, just organize them so that they lay flat in the braid. Here's another example of rigid stems right here. So I'm gonna leave those to stick out because they really are done cooperating. They're just gonna go ahead and stick out. If you feel like you want to level up and take on a challenge, at this point you can pick it up. Pick it up and be sure that those three pieces stay separate. It takes practice because sometimes one of them will jump into the other and you get confused and you have to kind of backtrack, but don't be discouraged. Just try again. So I've got this one here that I'm crossing over. I'm going to add this to the middle. A lot of hand control. Now I'm kind of finding the long ones on this side, leaving these rigid ones to just stick out. So I'm taking these and I'm crossing them over, not to mix any of them up, having full hand control, pinching well. Cross over, add, hold. Cross over, let the rigid ones stick out, and add.
cross. Sometimes I need to find that stem and pull it just a little bit to get the bud close to the base. Add. Cross. Flatten out. Flatten them out so it's less of a bunch. Okay, add. It's a big flower. You see this one is pretty close to blooming. Cross. If you get them when they're close to blooming like that, you run the risk of, first of all, that the stems are too rigid. And then second of all, what's worse is that they open, pollinate themselves, and then shatter. Kind of like dandelions. So you don't want that to happen. But hey, if it does happen, you can brush off all that feathery stuff and still use it as a flower crown. The flowers, when they open, they look a little bit different. They're really pretty too. I just don't work with it because the stems tend to be rigid and sometimes they snap and the flower crown is kind of with a gap and doesn't look as symmetrical as I'd like it. But the flower is pretty when it opens. Okay, I'm gonna bend this a little bit just to keep a circular form. It's pretty forgiving and I can do it later, but I still like to do it. I suppose that most of you who are watching this are already pretty crafty people. So I'm just going to continue like this because I'm sure you're already trying it by now. I think the most challenging part of doing this is maneuvering your hands around these rigid ends that stick out. So if you make a mess of it, don't worry. I've done that many times, and it's a part of learning it. But once you get practice, you're gonna go fast-ish like I am. I really love this flower, especially at a summer solstice festival, because these flowers, the way they're golden, they just really look like they represent the golden sun that warms our skin in the summer and that makes our tomatoes juicy. The whole plant, the stem, the leaves, the flower, smells like a really strong curry. But not to be mistaken for the curry that we eat. because curry, the spice, comes from a completely different plant.
At this point, you'll want to put it around your head and see how long you need it. For me, I can stop at 1/2 meter. You'll stop a little earlier for a child size head or a little later for someone who wants it bigger.
Okay, I'm going to finish it by continuing to braid, being sure that it's as flat as I can make it. Cross, flatten it, cross, flatten, cross, wiggle, cross, flatten, cross, cross, and one more, cross. Okay, now I have a braid. I'm just going to bring these together and cut them off. I prefer to make it super tight, so I'm going to use floral wire. So first, to keep these ends together, I'm going to take my small piece of floral wire and tighten it as tight as possible, because it will shrink as it dries. And then I'll wrap it around. We're gonna take an end of it and lay it flat against this braided part, like that. I'm going to secure it in 2 places. First, I'll do it right here. Tie it on the inside as tight as possible because it will shrink. I bent it down, and now I'm going to curl it under and push it down against the braid. So now I have this part sticking out. I can either cut it off or attach it. I'm going to attach it. I'll do it with twine so you can see how I do that. I'm going to come around like this and lay it down. If you're doing workshops, this is the best material because people can lay it down and just kind of relax and focus on how to get this really tight. We'll cut that off later. Okay, now's the moment to clean it up. It's looking a little wonky. I start snipping off everything that's popping off. So it's all cleaned up. Now I'm gonna go around and bend and shape the braid into a circle. Okay, here it is. It's in a circle. So pretty. I love the way it feels. The braid in there is real handsome and smells amazing. Here was the back, and as you can see, when it's on your head, you won't be able to see that at all. This will be the front, the side, the other side. So the fabric of your choice, I'm gonna, at the back part, tie. If you want, you can leave it like this. Which is also pretty. Or you can make a bow.
I love wearing these at summer festivals. Remember to keep them dry and away from humidity to prevent decomposition. If you're growing flowers in a dry climate, subscribe to my channel and follow along as I test different varieties in my drought-tolerant cutting garden.